Hi everyone, and welcome back to season 2 of Commerce Meets Law, a podcast we talk about various commercial topics and how they interact with the legal profession. Welcome back to another video podcast. I hope that you enjoyed the last one with Olivia, and I thought that I'll bring it back for today's guest. So, our guest today is Asha Patel, a trainee solicitor at Bevan Brittan LLP, working at their Leeds office. Asha is also a diversity and inclusion committee member at the Leeds Law Society, a researcher at the Commercial Law Academy, and she also runs a blog called All's Fair in Law alongside her best friend, Nikki Larder, which you should definitely check out. And I will also link it down in the podcast description. Now, it's safe to say that Asha juggles several professional and personal commitments all at the same time, and that's exactly why I wanted to have her on the podcast. So, Asha completed her law degree from the University of Birmingham in 2020 before pursuing the LPC at the University of Law. Before she joined Bevan Brittan, Asha worked as a paralegal, both with high street firms and in house, allowing her to build up her confidence and relevant experience before becoming a trainee solicitor. Now, during our conversation, we dive into Asha's experiences before she became a trainee, and particularly we also talk about her paralegal roles, comparing those that she did when she was working in the field of conveyancing, and also looking at that alongside when she was at a commercial firm working in their in-house legal team. We also discuss Asha's passion for increasing diversity and inclusion in the legal profession, particularly for South Asian women, which is a topic, of course, that is close to both of our hearts. The rapid fire for this episode includes some questions related to the north of England, as Asha is a proud northerner, and this is certainly reflected in her responses. Asha gets super defensive, but in a lovely way during those questions, and it was just really nice to see that. So, this one is dedicated to all of our CMR listeners from the north. So, I sincerely hope that you enjoy that final round. Without further ado, I hope you enjoy our conversation, and I'll see you right at the end.
So, hi Asha, and welcome to Commerce Meets Law. Super excited to have you on the podcast today and also to explore your journey. So, before we get started, we always have a bit of an icebreaker on the podcast. So, the question is, in your opinion, what is your superpower?
Yeah, thank you, Shreya, and I hope you're well, and thank you so much for having me on the podcast. So, really excited for all the questions you have for me. But to answer your first question, I would say that my superpower is multitasking because I realize that every single day I'm carrying out a range of tasks, activities, and communicating to a range of people. I'm someone that really likes to do a lot. So in my personal life, this will be ensuring that I'm taking care of myself in terms of making sure that I'm making time to go to the gym, cook, and doing all the other things that make me like feel happy, like seeing family and friends. And in my professional life, alongside my training and my working, I also like to get involved in a range of initiatives at the firm. So I'm an EDI ambassador, I'm a green ambassador for the firm, and I'm also part of the social committee for the Leeds office. So overall, I'd say that it's my superpower because it really brings me joy, and I think it's something that I thrive off, knowing that I'm being busy and being productive as well. So yeah, that's what my superpower is.
Yeah, I love that. And I can definitely relate to you on that one. I think that, having multiple interests and like you said, having that balance is so key to ensure that you feel fulfilled in everything that you do. Now, we sort of start firstly by just looking at a little bit at your sort of academic background, your sort of early stage. So, could you talk a little bit about when you first developed an interest in law and thought that the legal profession could be a path for you?
Yeah, so at the risk of sounding very cliche, I actually decided when I was 10 years old, I think, yeah, I actually did tell my dad at that age that I wanted to become a lawyer. So when I was young, I did elocution, which is very similar to acting, but it's a bit more formal where you recite like passages and then say it in a certain expressive way. But this is where I really gained confidence in public speaking from a young age, and I really enjoyed it. And I also love to read from a young age. And I think when you're younger, or at least for me, my idea of what a lawyer was someone that goes to court, reads a lot, and has the ability to be a good public speaker. And because that's what my view was at that age, I just thought, yeah, I'll do that. I think I could be that. And I stuck to it, and I've never doubted pursuing a career in law either. It's just always felt so me and just aligned to my interests.
Yeah, and did you sort of consider taking sort of a non-law degree and then going into law, or did you sort of know that a 3-year law degree was sort of the one for you?
No, so it's always going to be law for me. I think I did consider looking into law combined with business or in an international degree combined with law, but it was going to be law. It wasn't going to be something that I would like convert to after. And then picking my A levels as well, like English, history, and law, specifically because I knew that they would be a good combination when it came to applying to read law, even though you don't need anything like that specific at A level to go off and do law. But for me, it was always going to be law, so I just tailored my whole academic career to that. So yeah.
And you decided to study at the University of Birmingham. So could you talk a little bit about your experience at university and sort of what you enjoyed the most?
Yeah, I loved University of Birmingham. It seems like a whole blur now. I actually graduated in 2020, so my final year was cut short because of COVID. Um, but yeah, I think like what I enjoyed most about moving to Birmingham, because I'm from Preston in Lancashire, so location wise, it was a big move for me, and I didn't know anyone else in Birmingham or going to university when I moved there. But the best part was making new friends. And I think, I don't know, I sound really old when I say this, but I'm not. I think at my age now, all of my friends are scattered because everyone's just so busy and everyone's moved location for their careers. So having friends in the Midlands now, it's nice because we're all just scattered anyway. So yeah, definitely making friends was the best part. Um, yeah, and I think something that was a struggle as well was probably like lecture style learning at uni. And that was something
Yeah,
that I just with. I much prefer like classroom style learning. I don't know how you're feeling with that at the moment.
yeah, I think I'm definitely someone who sort of enjoys that active approach more than, sort of passively sitting in a lecture hall. And I was that annoying kid at school who, like, always answered all the questions. So not being able to do that in a lecture setting,
Yeah,
particularly I think with law, because, the classroom or the number of students can be quite large. So, even in those sort of seminar discussions, which happen every so often, that's sort of when you get to engage in that classroom
yeah.
way. And I think that, like you highlight, the social side of it is so important at university. It's one of the things that people really look forward to. So, in terms of your, I guess, academic journey and looking at careers, when did you first start thinking about what you wanted to do, and how did you tailor your work experience kind of alongside that?
Um, So I began work experience from a really young age. I actually began legal work experience at 16 because with my interests being purely wanting to pursue a career in law. So I was still always studying, going at school, and I always had a part-time job since the age of 16. So it was really anywhere that I could fit in the time to do it. So that would be probably in the summer holidays or university holidays, really. And in terms of applications, I think, to be honest, I prioritize just getting through university and doing my coursework and my seminar work above applications. I would see my course friends like be in second year and be going off to back schemes and doing that. But I don't know, for me, it was just more like one thing at a time. So I did probably postpone it a little bit in comparison to my peers, but I just did it when I felt like I had more time and had more engagement to do it. So I probably did applications probably in final year of university after a coursework deadline. And I didn't stress about it too much either, because it was just, you've got so much to think about as a law student as well in terms of pursuing a career in law. So one thing at a time, definitely.
I think that is such a key one to highlight because I think increasingly, with sort of first year schemes and even before that with schemes during sixth form, it feels like there is such a race to, get that job offer as soon as you can at university, whilst, even though you're sort of still doing your degree work and you're trying to have a bit of a social life, it is a lot to juggle all at the same time. And I think that that's where your kind of paralegal journey before you became a trainee, I think is really, really important and super interesting as well. So what was your first role upon graduation, and how did you sort of come to secure that role?
So my first role upon graduation, which it was in the midst of COVID and lockdown. So it was at a conveyancing law firm in Blackpool. So just on the outskirts of, but a bit further on from Preston, actually. So firstly, it was in COVID and it was during the stamp duty holiday. So it was absolutely manic with house sales and purchases and transfers. But I was in person in the office 5 days a week as well. So nothing had ever changed in terms of working environment, but adjusting to working throughout the COVID pandemic was also something new to me that I never experienced before. How I landed that role, firstly, was I think there's always going to be a vast amount of jobs available on the property market in the UK. Like, that's just my view on it. And especially at that time period at the stamp duty holiday, there was a necessity for them roles because it was just manic in conveyancing. So it was really easy. I think I just contacted a recruiter because I wanted to get sort of work experience in alongside doing the LPC, but I actually managed to secure a full-time job, which I didn't really intend of wanting to pursue because of the LPC studies. But I kind of got the offer. I went for the interview, I got the offer, and I just thought I'd roll with it. So that's how that came around. And then I was a conveyancing paralegal at Alexander Gray Solicitors, that high street firm. And I learned so much because they're in dire need of people, really. And I think this is a great thing about working for high street solicitors. And I think when you're a law student, you target them bigger city firms, and sometimes you kind of forget about the high street smaller ones, but it's the high street smaller firms that give you real experience. They just need someone to help them. So if you're willing to be hands-on, they'll get you involved in pretty much everything. So I learned so much about conveyancing and, dealing with clients on phones as well, especially dealing with stressed clients on the phone, because they say like buying a house is one of the most stressful things you do in life. So actually like adjusting my communication styles and managing client expectations as well. I learned from that. So yeah, a really good experience. It was stressful at times, but it's all character building and it's helpful when you do it from a young age.
Absolutely. And I think, like you said, especially at the time that you started, that it must have been absolutely manic with the pandemic and the stamp duty holiday. And I think at any point buying a house is stressful. So particularly during the pandemic, I can imagine that it was kind of putting yourself right in there, but that probably led to a lot of on the job training, which, as they say, is sort of the best way to get yourself immersed in that sort of world. And for anyone who may be unaware, could you just explain briefly what conveyancing is, and as a paralegal, what some of perhaps your tasks look like on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, so in its simplest form, conveyancing is the buying, selling, and transfer of properties, or say ownership of that property. But what my tasks were was pretty much anything and everything. So I would probably I had input into the whole process, so client onboarding, when you list a client, doing the sort of money checks on them. And then I would do like sort of the client care letters that go out when they first instruct us as solicitors. And then I'd move on to sort of doing searches on the property. So you get like water, local authority, and environmental searches on properties to check that the property is okay to, reside in. Then I would go on to do things like drafting reports on the outcome of their searches, drafting a report on their mortgage that they've been provided. I also had stabs at reports and titles as well, which are quite long-winded documents, but that was essentially just a report on the title that they had on that property. I'd liaise a lot with the vendor and the estate agent as well, because quite often Fridays is when we'd set up a lot of house transfers, and it'd be a whole chain of like one person moving into another property and then that person moving out and then going on. So I sort of liaise with points of contact just to ensure it was all in order, and also liaise with their bank that they were going to receive the funds from, to ensure that we were going to receive them on that day, because when receiving funds from banks, there's certain time limits that you receive it to, but also there's certain time limits that a law firm can hold on to that. So if a sale wasn't going to go through, you have to send the money back to the bank. You can't just like hold on to it. So dealing with the banks as well, I sort of had that exposure with. And then Yeah, I think the final bit was a bit of post-completion work that I'd get involved with, so completion statements and basically ensuring that the law firm at the end of the day was receiving the right amount of funds for our fees to be paid from the client. So yeah, it's a whole whirlwind of things I've got experience to. But yeah, if you get experience working in high street firms, it's fantastic because you'll get involved in everything.
Yeah, and that sounds amazing. I think, sort of like you briefly explained, from that start of the process to the end, each of the tasks that you sort of get involved with and all of those sort of crunch points that you have that you sort of have to adhere to in order for that transaction to go through. And particularly, like you said, at high street firms, you have that real-time exposure and you're dealing with people on the ground. So, and buying a house is a very stressful but also a very important part of someone's life. So, you kind of have that added stress on you as well. The other kind of aspect that I wanted to explore, of course, you then went on to DWF, but kind of becoming an in-house paralegal and just kind of explaining that transition. Why do you decide to sort of go from the world of conveyancing and real estate into working in-house?
It's a good question, but I think as I was trying to navigate my career as a paralegal, I was also doing the LPC, and I just kind of wanted to figure out what was meant for me because I hadn't secured a training contract at that point, but I wanted to go in the direction of the field that I enjoyed the most, which was corporate work. And I don't know if you've come across this yourself, but I personally feel like corporate paralegal roles, there aren't that many out there. I think due to the nature of the work, it's quite complex. So to have junior level roles in corporate, there's not as many as there are in, say, other fields like property. So I was seeking a corporate paralegal role essentially at a law firm, but what I actually ended up going into was in-house work. So it was at a private equity company in Manchester, Protura, which is fantastic. So that was where I worked in-house, and it was a really great experience. So with my background being so heavily legal, going to work in-house opened a whole new raft of exposure to me. And if you are a paralegal that switches from a law firm to working in-house, you'll feel this change as well, this shift. So I got to work with accountants, venture capitalists, individuals in risk, IT and marketing. And at this point in my career, I had never even spoken to an accountant or a venture capitalist before. So it really opened my eyes up to the different industries that exist essentially, but also working in-house is where I developed a newfound appreciation for client care and experience. But I also understood that for full service commercial law firms, they have a variety of clients across all different industries and sectors as well. So it was really good to just be able to work with a variety of people and see how their ideas it was an idea, and then see the process of it transitioning to a reality. Because working in-house, at least for me, it would be that the initiative would be on driving growth. So the idea would come first, and then second would come what is legal saying, when really in a law firm we think the other way around. So I think from a legal perspective, they would say, okay, we've got this idea, what do we need to have in place to do X, Y, and Z? So that's why I really understood that lawyers are enablers. We help our clients achieve their goals. So yeah, great experience working in-house, and it's really valuable to see that when you work in-house. And that's why I think if you're given the opportunity to do a secondment during your training contract to a client, like, go for it, because you'll experience so much like experience just from working with different people as well.
Absolutely. I think that there is that perception that, when you're in a law firm, all around you, there are just lawyers. And I think you have that idea that you're sort of running it. But when you go in-house, you realize that you're part of a wider team. You're part of a team which is not just lawyers, but actually has got various others. And I think that perspective is so important. So when you come back, you can serve your clients better. And, whatever stage you have that experience, I think it definitely is a key one. And speaking a little bit about, I guess, looking at your paralegal journey, and at the same time you're sort of applying for kind of training contracts. When did you start applying for those vacation schemes at first, and in which cycle were you sort of eventually successful?
I think I fully committed to applying for vacation schemes in my final year of university, and I was successful during the year of my LPC and securing a training contract. Yeah, like I mentioned before, my peers, my friends, they would be applying from first year, second year, but I don't know. I think I was a bit nervous to do it because I felt like I wasn't confident in myself to approach it. So I thought there's no point me doing my answers yet because I know that I'm not at that level. I'm not ready to do it yet. And I know that if I submitted an application, it wouldn't be successful. I kind of just had to work on me, work on my answers. And I was more focused on my studies actually and gaining that work experience to gain confidence as well. So yeah, final year. But I know like my friends, they secured it in second year and it's just whatever works for you, really.
And if you could go back, I guess someone who is maybe in that position right now in second or third year, do you think that that paralegal journey kind of allowed you to be more confident in your applications, or in hindsight, would you have sort of started your applications at an earlier stage?
No, definitely. I mean, I'd probably be biased because everything has worked out for me. So it's like everything's for a reason. Um, and yeah, I think to be honest, if I was still unsuccessful, if I was still a paralegal, I think maybe I'd be looking back and saying I should have started from a younger age. But I really think that any work experience, any paralegal experience is invaluable. You know, it does give you confidence, it gives you that practical experience as well. And that's something that you bring to a training contract application in your answers, in your interviews. And with my sort of colleagues who are in my cohort, at Bevan Brittan, who I train with, there's some people that have come from different sort of industries prior to pursuing a career in law who don't have paralegal experience prior to starting the training contract. And I remember them saying to me like, oh, like you've got loads of experience, I wish I had that. But really it's down to who you are as a person because they have transferable skills from what they previously did. But I feel like for me, I'll always back like doing paralegal experience because I've just experienced so much and because I've done it from a young age as well, it's good that it's all sort of tailored in nicely to what I can now bring to everyday work.
Absolutely. I think one of the messages we try and get through on this podcast as well is that you don't have to have that traditional getting your, kind of TT in your second year and doing it that way. You can be a career changer, you could have had paralegal experience. And
Yeah.
I think having that combination of people is actually so important because then you can connect to certain clients and certain people in a different way. And at the end of the day, law is like a people business. So having that, vast array of experience, I think is so key.
I actually did try to diversify my experience as well. So, if you go on LinkedIn, you'll see that people who still pursuing a career in law as a solicitor, they'll have like experience at Deloitte or PwC doing internships, so, several graduate schemes. And I did try actually to diversify my experience because that's more that you can bring. And it's such an important message that it's not just legal, like anything that you can bring to the table, bring it. So yeah.
Definitely. And I think, like we spoke about earlier, lawyers are enablers and then sort of are adding to that final product. And it's not just one person running the show, it's a group of people. So I think having that array of experience and understanding it from that opposite perspective, and which is why, sort of working in-house is so valuable, is also key in you becoming a better lawyer. And I think you've given us a nice segue into talking about your life as a trainee now. So you're now a trainee at Bevan Brittan and based in Leeds. So can you tell us a little bit about the firm and what attracted you to the firm in particular?
Yeah, definitely. So Bevan Brittan is a national law firm. It's full service and there's 4 offices. So I'm based in their Leeds office, but they also have offices in London, Birmingham, and Bristol. But what initially attracted me to Bevan Brittan was just to backtrack slightly, I fell in the trap of applying to everywhere and anywhere when I was looking for training contracts. But I'm really glad that I did because this is why I developed knowledge of all the different styles and structures of law firms that exist in the UK. And then through that, I was able to identify what I was looking for in a law firm. So then what attracted me to Bevan Brittan was I thought that their core values are ones that I really aligned with. And their friendly and supportive culture of the work firm was what I always aspired to work for. I'm much more suited to a smaller, medium-sized law firm that I can really engage with colleagues and have a relationship with them instead of being be transatlantic, because that suited me. And I realized that the type of person I am, I like to get involved and speak to people and have relationships. So the size of Bevan Brittan as well was something that attracted me to them. And then secondly, one of Bevan Brittan's outlooks towards their clients is that their firm operates in their client's world, and the firm knows what it takes for their clients to succeed and really thrive. And this stuck out to me when I do my research on them, because having worked in-house, which I previously mentioned, this is why I developed a newfound appreciation for client care and experience. I understood what setbacks and success look like to clients, having literally worked with, like, essentially a client working in-house. So I witnessed that. So the fact that Bevan Brittan and I shared the same outlook to clients and professional values meant that I could envision myself working for Bevan Brittan in the long-term future. And it's a lovely law firm to work for, and I've enjoyed every moment, and I can't believe how quickly my training contract has gone so far.
So talk to me a little bit about your training contract. Can you speak a bit about the seats you've completed so far and how you decided the ones that you wanted to pursue?
Yeah, so 3 seats across 3 different departments now at Bevan Brittan. So I'm quite glad that, like, they've all been so varied. But my first seat was in corporate, my second seat was in property litigation, and my third and current seat, which I'm due to finish in a month, is employment and pensions. So it's a split seat. So actually, not every law firm does this, but Bevan Brittan is quite fond of doing, or it's quite popular for them to do split seats. So I've heard other firms say, well, my friends at other firms say that we don't do that. But if you get experience doing a split seat, it's great, because you get more experience doing multiple things, learning multiple things. And sometimes there's overlaps as well, which work nicely together. But with my first seat, I'd already had a corporate background working in-house. So I was quite keen to, like, continue that in my training contract. And it just so happened that I was giving it as my first seat. That worked quite nicely for me, and it was like a comfortable transition, actually. But in general, how I go about picking my seat is, it's honestly where I feel like my interests lie, at the point of when we're asked to submit our preferences, because a lot can change in 6 months. You know, when you first start a seat, you've got a view of what you'd like to do next and where your interests lie, and then you go through that seat and actually everything changes, and you're like, actually I want to do this, because after doing that I think I want to do this. And yeah, I think just be open-minded as well throughout your training contract, because it's the best way to be, because sometimes you're given a seat that you may not have exactly wanted, but it turns out being something that you really enjoyed and something that surprised you.
I think we've had quite a few sort of trainees on the podcast, and that's sort of the advice that is always there of, you know, some people may come in having a really good idea of exactly what they want to do. And like you said, 6 months in, that could all change, and you could realize actually what you were theorizing in your head may have been very different from the practical reality of it. So I think having that open mind, and particularly wanting to do different seats, and, you know, understanding that what you think in your head may not be what actually happens is such a key one. And from your perspective now, sitting in employment and pensions, what does your kind of a day in your life look like, with the caveat perhaps that, you know, every day could be slightly different?
Yeah, so in employment, and actually the work is just like, I will get employment instructions, I'll get pension instructions. It's not ordered in any methodical way, so it's just whatever gets through my inbox. But with employment to begin with, we're very busy at the moment, and I've been quite busy for a while, actually, to the lead up to Christmas and then coming back in the new year. But it'd be mainly preparation for tribunal, you know. So I would draft a lot of documents to prepare for tribunal. So that might be pleadings, or particulars of response, merits advice to clients, case preparation as well for tribunal, and counsel as well. So it might just be drafting a chronology of events that have taken place in this claim, so we can better understand it. I also prepare lots of disclosure bundles as well, lots and lots of bundles, because they are just integral to a hearing. You know, if you're working in any litigation type seat, bundles will definitely crop up. But that's where you get to know, like, all the details and the ins and outs of cases. I also draft witness statements as well. So I'll virtually be in a meeting with our witnesses. I'll take the attendance note, which has to be verbatim, and then I'll draft their statement as well. So it's a lot of client care. It's a lot of dealing with counsel, liaising with them, ensuring that they're well prepared for the hearing, but also the nitty bits of the job of preparing bundles, preparing draft advice to clients as well, and just ensuring that they know what's going on with the claim, because these claims, especially post-COVID, they can go on from like 2 to 3 years. So, you know, people forget what's going on and people leave organizations as well. And new people take over their post as well. So there's that aspect to it. But what I really enjoy about employment is post-COVID, so many new sort of things have cropped up in the workplace. For example, EDI and employees transitioning gender as well. You know, I think these are definitely more dominant issues that are raised in the workplace post-COVID than before. So there's pieces of legislation being drafted on this, and you know, we advise on that as well. So when clients have queries, you know, relating to that, and flexible working requests as well, you know, that just wasn't a thing before COVID. So I like that aspect to it. And what I like as well is that we do client seminars often and webinars. So like putting research together and then delivering that to a client as well. That's nice. So that's employment, and it keeps me very busy. And then for pensions, I'd never done pensions before, and it's not something that you typically learn at degree level or the LPC, but it's very, very interesting. So what I'd say that I've done so far in pensions, because pension is constantly changing, like legislation's constantly changing, it's never the same. But in terms of how I deliver pension work to clients, it would be like they have a query about a document, something they've invested in, and a document relates to it. And I sort of have to analyse between the lines and assess it against current legislation as well to provide an answer. It's also that things can get messy in pensions, you know, people haven't retrieved their pensions correctly as well, and we're trying to help them, and it might be like drafting appeals to decisions made in relation to them not receiving their state pension. So it's hard to say, because all my tasks have been so varied in pensions, and you know, one of them is doing research and delivering that to clients. But it's a great seat to do if you get the opportunity to do it, because it's very good for critical thinking, analysing documents, data, and problem solving as well. So yeah, I hope that answers your question well.
Yeah, and I think for anyone who's sort of listening and perhaps has an interest in that sort of more contentious work, related litigation, it would be so, useful for them to know exactly, what sort of goes on. Because I think sometimes it can be a bit of a mystery. You may think that you know what's going on, and once you sort of get into the training contract, that may look very different. So I think having that understanding, and also knowing that it can be very different at every firm, depending on their clients, is sort of another key aspect. In terms of
I actually learned that there's only 1,000 practicing pension lawyers in the UK, so it's a very small area,
yeah.
niche area. So if you were to go into it, it's great, because you know there's a demand for it.
And from your perspective, I guess, having now come, sort of in complete 3 seats and kind of more towards the end of your training contract, if you could go back to the start, is there anything you'd have done differently to maybe make that experience even more enjoyable, perhaps a bit smoother?
Yeah, just like don't be afraid to ask for help if you don't understand something. Say it, because I think when you first start a training contract, or at least for me, you may think that there's an expectation to know how to do things first off straight away, when there really isn't that expectation. So if you're unsure, just say, ask for that second clarification and raise the points as well, because then by doing that, you confirm your understanding, but also like whoever you're feeding that back to, they might think, actually, I don't want you to do that. Can you do this now that we've talked it out? So yeah, definitely just don't be afraid to ask for help.
Yeah, and I think asking questions is such a key one, because you may save yourself and the person working on the case a lot of hassle if you clarified it at the start rather than having to go back and correct it right at the end. We spoke a bit earlier about the other roles that you have at the firm as well. So can you talk a little bit about the other initiatives that you've gotten involved at Bevan Brittan?
Yeah, so I am an EDI ambassador, so Equality, Diversity and Inclusion ambassador, and I'm a Green ambassador. And I'm head of social committee. I've been told I'm the head, but I don't. But to begin with, I'm an EDI ambassador for the firm, so that's like I get involved in initiatives of promoting EDI at the firm. I'm on the South Asian network as well, so through that, I hosted a fireside chat with the previous president of the Law Society, Lubna Shuja, and it was during South Asian Heritage Month in July that I hosted or chaired a fireside chat between Lubna and a partner and head of energy and resource management at the firm, Nadeem. They discussed their sort of experiences in the legal professions of South Asians, but we looked at it for a view in the future as well. So I've been able to get involved in a range of initiatives, and it's great that I've done that, because I would have never thought that I would have had the opportunity to do that as well. So that's what I do in that scope. Green Ambassador, so our firm's quite committed to sustainability and reaching our net zero target by 2026. Each of the offices have their green ambassadors, and we kind of come together for one big meeting, I think, every quarter, but we have regular office meetings, and we work at looking at how sustainable our office is and how we can be more environmentally friendly, and also what we can do for the community. So we actually have a litter picking at Leeds University in a few weeks as well. So that's another thing that I get involved with. As I mentioned, I'm part of the social committee. I like to organise events. I just like to organise fun things, I think. Yeah, so I help organise our social events like the Christmas party, the summer party are two key things that we host each year, but also providing like breakfast in the office, pizza in the office, events after work as well. So yeah, and I also do community engagement work. I started that in my second year of my training contract. So every Wednesday for 2 hours, I go to a local primary school and I read to like year 3 students, and they read to me, and it's to improve their literacy and reading like abilities as well. So it's really nice to do that, because I haven't been in a primary school since being in primary school essentially. But it's really nice that we get 2 hours to just go out and do that if we wish as trainees.
I think from that, anyone could tell that you definitely like to keep busy, and I think that you do such a wide range of things. And I remember coming back to that fireside chat, sort of coming across your profile at first when I looked at that, and just thinking that it's so important, especially, for the South Asian kind of community, especially during that time, to highlight that and to highlight the fact that the legal profession is becoming more diverse, but we definitely have a longer way to go in terms of making it as inclusive and diverse as possible. And I think that ties in nicely with your kind of role at the Leeds Law Society as well, as being someone who is kind of advocating for D&I. So could you talk a little bit about the kind of aims of Leeds Law Society and what your role looks like within the society itself?
Yeah, so I support the president of the Leeds Law Society, Shanika Varga, directly, and my role as a D&I committee member means I get involved in helping organising D&I related events like webinars and in-person talks. The aims of the organisation is to really just promote EDI within the legal profession in a positive and educational way. And I say positive because I think we don't want to give off an approach, and I would hate for an approach to be given that there's a criteria that some law firms are, it's like a tick box, like some law firms want to have X amount of individuals to meet a criteria. It shouldn't be like that, because my argument is as well that I'd like to be accepted for a role based on my merits and what I can do and my capabilities, not because I'm a South Asian individual and female as well. So I think it's just increasing understanding and awareness of what EDI is, and it's sort of introducing that more into the legal profession, and wants it in a positive and educational way, not a forceful way.
Absolutely. I think there is that argument constantly of, the merit versus bringing someone in because of a certain criteria or certain checklist that you need to be ticking. And I think, that can become a misconception and something that actually creates, sort of more controversy rather than actually realizing what the problem is. So, kind of highlighting that distinction is so important. One of the other things that I wanted to talk about was your blog, because one of the things that we also like talking about this podcast is those, side hustles that people have. A lot of young people are getting into it now. So could you tell us a bit about All Fair in Law and what kind of some of the articles that you've been writing for it?
Yeah, so the initiative behind starting my blog, which we called All Fair in Law, was firstly because I enjoy writing these short, informative articles, and it's something that I've continued doing where the opportunity lies at Bevan Brittan, and I'll always continue doing if there's an opportunity to do it. But secondly, it was also something to put on my CV and discussing TC applications, like this is also something that I'm doing, that I'm having an interest in and being active and proactive. But this is, so the reason for setting up the blog, I think the initiative was behind that. But my best friend studies sociology at university, and there's also overlaps between sociology and law in some areas. It's really interesting if you've ever engaged with that overlap before. But we were both on that journey of navigating our careers post-university, and we thought it'd be a good idea to write the articles together. So essentially, the blog's just not mine; it's also my best friend's as well. But I would bring the legal aspect, and my best friend would include a sociologist's point of view. So that's really where it all got set up. But my favourite article so far was the one that we wrote on non-surgical aesthetic procedures and how the industry lacks regulation. So I think it's such an interesting and relevant topic right now, because getting non-surgical aesthetic work done has become such a high street norm nowadays. But what that industry really lacks is legislation, regulation, precaution for, clients. And when things go wrong in these procedures due to the lack of regulation, what happens to those who suffer from these disastrous or unsafe procedures? So it's a really interesting topic, and I just think in general I've got an interest in that as well. So I think in the future lots of laws surrounding the industry will be created, which it needs, so it become more safe. So yeah, that was definitely my favourite one that we've wrote so far.
Yeah, I remember reading that article and thinking, I really didn't know much about the area, but I've definitely seen people getting the procedures, and so understanding the legal background to it. And also I love that intersection between, sort of law and sociology, because I think law does, kind of intersect with so many different areas, and it definitely, there's so many overlaps in various different disciplines. So exploring that on your blog is so, kind of interesting and very creative. And we'll definitely put links in the description so people can go check out that article as well, and have a read through it. And from that, I think, one of the other aspects that we like to talk about is that idea of personal growth and ensuring that you're growing not just in a professional way, but also you're aligning that with your personal goals. So talking a bit about motivation, we spoke earlier about, kind of balance and all the different areas that you do. What motivates you to come to work every day? And has that reason changed since, you were a paralegal and now that you're sort of a trainee, kind of, towards the further end of your training contract?
Yeah, good question. I think what motivates me to come to work every day is knowing that I'm busy, because obviously I thrive off being productive and tasking. But yeah, knowing that I'm busy and I have things that I need to get done for clients and deadlines to meet, and also the fact that my colleagues are relying on me to get things done so I can support them. When you're a trainee, you've only got 6 months in that team to support someone, and you're dipping in and out. So you might not be working on a transaction, a project, a case for the whole lifespan of it, but you are key and integral to the task that you do whilst you're there to support them. So knowing that, I've got deadlines to meet, people rely on me, that definitely motivates me to get up every day and go to work. But I don't think this reason has ever really changed over the span of my career. But definitely the jump from being a paralegal to a trainee, my responsibility has increased and people rely on me much more, which means going into work every day, I have a mental list of everything I need to do. And if I've achieved that by the end of the day, then fantastic. But if not, it's a motivator for the next day to get it done.
Yeah, and I think that we come back to the idea of law definitely being that people business and it being all about your clients. So that is, definitely a motivating factor that's going to last, because, that's always sort of going to be the crux of the end result being something that your clients are happy with and your colleagues are happy with as well, particularly when you're in a 6-month seat and there is that sort of crunch point of trying to get it done in the time that you're there. Before we sort of end with the rapid fire and we sort of have that, kind of slightly fun way to end the podcast, we always say hindsight is the best side. So if you had to give some advice to your 18-year-old self at the start of university, what do you think you would say to that,
Asha? Don't compare yourself to others. Just work on you being the best version of you. I think it's really easy to compare yourself in this generation, in this society, to what you see on social media. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about what anyone else is doing and what they're doing. You just keep putting in the work, stay positive, take on that constructive feedback and be responsive to it, and you'll get to where you want it eventually. So yeah, I think the moral in my story is just don't compare yourself to others, because I've had them days where it's like a long day at university, tiring day or LPC, and then you open your phone and you see an email rejection from a TC, and then you go onto LinkedIn and you see someone post about being successful and acquiring a training contract or a back scheme, and don't get down about it. Don't compare yourself, just you keep working on you. So I think that's a piece of advice that I'd give to my 18-year-old self.
Yeah, and I think that, it's such a key one, because especially now it is just so easy, like you said, to compare yourself, because you can see it at your fingertips, you can see exactly what's going on in other people's lives at that point. And I think what we tend to forget is people may post the highlights, but no one ever talks about those lowlights that they've had. And, they may have gotten an offer, but they haven't mentioned the maybe 15, 20 rejections that they've had before that. So I think remembering that is definitely easier said than done, but it's one that we sort of have to keep reminding ourselves that at every stage. And since we do end on our rapid fire, there is just one sort of kind of small question, but I guess if you had to give some advice now to someone who is perhaps in your position, is in a paralegal role and is kind of still applying for those training contracts, you decided to move in-house in that corporate role because that was sort of more aligned to where you wish to go. What would you say to someone who is in a paralegal position in terms of how they can talk about that, and how sort of what unique experience they have as opposed to someone who is kind of a fresh graduate out of university?
I would say your individualism is like your strength. So anything that you can really take from your paralegal experience and then use it to convey what you've done in a training contract application, just really just go for it and really just sort of take from any experience you've had. And I feel like when you sort of dig deep, you realize how much you've done. It's weird, like if that's your norm, you don't think that it's different and fantastic compared to someone that's doing X, Y, and Z. But you really need to just draw on you as a person and you gaining that experience and that knowledge. And if I'm being honest, if you think that you need to do more, then go out and find it, because, or start something. I wrote a blog. I started a blog because I just wanted to do something. Like, do what you think your application needs, and that will open loads of opportunities. You'll meet new people, you'll speak to new people. So my advice is that, like, go out and find what you think that you're missing, be proactive, but if not, really just repeat and take from what you already have.
Definitely. So our first question on our rapid fire, our final 5, is which day of your life would you like to relive if you could?
So last summer I went on a family holiday to Bali, and on one of the days I went on the swing, the famous swing that swings out over the rice field. So if I could go back, I would relive that day, because just wow, the view of the rice fields as I was swinging out, the most surreal thing, and I won't get that view anywhere else. So yeah, definitely that one.
I love that, and that holiday kind of memory is always, they're always extra in your brain. And from Bali back to Leeds, we're taking quite a long way, but just to get a bit of perspective from your end, from someone who's from down south and has not experienced that much of the north, what is your favorite thing about Leeds?
Good food places, and they're independent, which is what I like, not so chained based restaurant style. So yeah, lots of independent food places and a real variety for it.
Yeah, I love that. And what are the top three myths you think about sort of the north of England that you think you can bust for us?
Um, okay, number one, the weather isn't all that bad. It's pretty gloomy for the most part and has been this week, but it's not always raining, clouds, and cold. When the sun is shining, it's nice. Yeah. Secondly, it's not all countryside either. So the previously known rural areas have been developed, I'd say, as I've grown up, and just there's constantly construction work being done to develop, I think, the north in general. To create new amenities like shopping centres and places to live, like constantly, like flats are being developed. So yeah, it's not all countryside. And thirdly, there's not as many fish and chip shops as you think. So someone who is from down south once said to me that, you've got a fish and chip shop around every corner up north, and I don't think that's true at all.
I love that. I love how the northern you came out in that question. Amazing. I think you've definitely convinced us on that one. And from the north of England back out, I guess. But what are the top three travel destinations on your bucket list for either this year or perhaps the next couple of years?
Brazil, Barbados, and Jamaica.
I love that. I think I can see you've thought it through. So those look like they're going to be
I
picked
mean,
up.
everyone, but yeah.
Amazing. And if you had to choose an alternative career path to law, what do you think you would choose?
So I've always loved the idea of working for a magazine. Yeah, I've just loved it. I mean, I don't know for the viewers if they've seen The Bold Type on Netflix, or maybe even Ugly Betty. That's a much older program, but so I first stemmed an interest of working in a magazine from watching them programs. And I would love to be running the show. I'd love to be editor-in-chief. Like, I would love to be editor-in-chief of Vogue, essentially.
I love that. And I think with that, Asha, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. It was super interesting, I think, to learn about your journey from university to learning about kind of, your role as a paralegal, and also, of course, your journey at Bevan Brittan. Wishing you all the best with the rest of your training contract. And thank you for taking out the time to come speak to us today.
No, thank you so much for your time, Shreya. The questions have been great, and it's been like lovely to speak to you. So thank you.
And on that note, thank you so much for listening to our episode today. And a massive shout out to Asha for taking the time to come on the podcast and be so candid, yet so knowledgeable in all of her responses. If you wish to take one thing from this episode, it should be that Asha's journey truly proves that each of our paths into the profession may look different, but consistency and resilience will eventually lead you to success. And every experience that you have, no matter how insignificant you think it is, or how big it is, or whichever field it's in, is only going to help you become a better lawyer or whichever profession you decide to go into ultimately. Now, as always, please do send your feedback on commercemeetslaw@gmail.com. You can also DM me on Instagram at commercemeetslaw. And if you don't know already, we also have a YouTube channel called Commerce Meets Law, where I'll be uploading our video podcasts just like this one, extra content for all of our CMR listeners. I do have a video ready to go, which is sort of part of the extra content, just waiting for approval. So that will be on there very, very soon. So I so hope that you're excited. And if you're not subscribed already, please do go and subscribe. We also have a TikTok now called commerce.meets.law. My knowledge with TikTok isn't the best, but this is certainly teaching me. So please do go and follow us there and let me know your feedback on anything that I can improve on. For now, though, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Take care, goodbye, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.